I'll be super concrete. If we're not aware of our thoughts, if we struggle in being aware of our emotions, if we struggle in being aware of how the world around us is actually unfolding, we're not even in the game of high performance.
Hey, this is Chad Namiro.
And I'm Kelley Namiro. Welcome to the Balancing Chaos podcast,
A lifestyle podcast where we will interview guests about wellness, business, and just about everything in between.
Our goal is to help you develop a lifestyle that promotes health, wholeness, and success. Through our conversations, we hope to inspire you to live a beautiful, full, and joyful life as you navigate balancing the chaos.
We hope you enjoy. All right, everybody. So in today's episode, we are absolutely thrilled to announce Dr. Michael Gervais. Michael is a high-performance psychologist who works with some of the best in the world, including Olympians, internationally acclaimed artists, musicians, and MVPs from every major sport and company. He's a published author and speaker, the founder and host of Finding Mastery podcast, one of my personal favorites, I might add, the co-creator of the Performance Institute at USC, which is near and dear to Kelley and I's heart as Trojans, and has had his work on countless news and media outlets. He is a major inspiration to us both. It is our absolute pleasure to have you on the show, Dr. Michael Gervais. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. What a warm welcome. Glad to be here with you guys.
Yeah. How are things in sunny LA?
Yeah, it's great. Weather's good. I think that part's always easy down here. The other things that are not so good, though, is that it feels like the world is ready for something new. The tension is really high across our planet, and the world to open back up, from COVID, from the pandemic, and travel is back on board now for many of the clients I work with, and this is the same sentiment I feel like in Netherlands, in Paris, in Australia. Like there's that tension that's taking place. So I don't know if you guys feel it, but there's an echo chamber of mental health issues that are reverberating across the planet right now.
1,000%. It's so real. I feel like COVID kind of had people in this, like, it almost felt like safe and in some ways for some people, and then for some people were going crazy and being alone in their own house. And now that it's like the wild west where people are going out again, I think there are some people who are severely anxious about it, and then some people who are really like overwhelmed getting back to work. So I can understand why you would be seeing a variety of different mental health issues across the board.
It is all over the shop. Some people, the pandemic, that they're like, this was great. Myself and my loved ones, we didn't get sick. My business grew. And for some people, it was the exact opposite, which is like sickness and illness ran throughout the family. Businesses were depleted, like really dire experiences, as we know. So the range was, I say that the range is real, but I say that because it doesn't mean that we can't feel and own our own experience throughout something that was emotionally charging for all of us, whether it was high highs or low lows. So yeah. I think it is important for us to kind of embrace how other people experience it, but also embrace our own experience in it, whatever that might be.
One thing that Chad was telling me yesterday, when we were kind of preparing to talk to you, is that now after the pandemic, there's like, I think, what did you say? 64% of America, like America's youth is like living in the fear for our future. I'm curious to see like what your thoughts are on that, how, not only how COVID impacted it, but like how other things like social media and the stress of potentially working from home, things like that are impacting our nation's youth in terms of like fear of the future.
Well, we started to really notice that the boundaries became incredibly blurred. So the boundaries between work and home and work and school were a mess. And that changed something for us. We basically said, I'm not doing it like this anymore. I'm not doing the old way. And so people raised their hands and said, okay, listen, I'm really grateful I have a job. But you know what? I have laid at the altar of performance, at the altar of achievement. I have sacrificed my health. I have sacrificed the relationships with my kids, with my loved ones. 9 to 5 was like a made up thing. It's more like 7 to 7. And now that the pandemic hit and I'm at home, I'm like, whoa, I'm going to get 2 hours a day back of travel. I've got a sense of autonomy in my life. I can choose how and when. I've got the relationships that matter to me are actually in close proximity. And so, like, I've got relationships in place. I got a sense of autonomy. And I feel like if I could just organize my life this way a little bit better, I could get better at the things that I've signed up to do for the company. So, you know what? I'm not coming back to work. I'm not doing life the way I used to.
Yeah.
And people like writ large left their steady jobs for what? They left their steady jobs for a better way of living. And so the contract between employers and employees is being rewritten right now.
Right.
And so it's starting to, under our feet, it's being rewritten, but it's starting to settle back into, the pendulum was quite extreme and now it's settling back. And so to answer your question concretely, when we think about young people versus people that are young in work. So I was answering about young in work, but young people with social media, they're not ready. I'm not ready for social media.
Yeah.
Like, I've studied my whole life neuroscience and I understand what's happening. And shit, there's hundreds of PhDs and engineers that have designed the app that suck you in.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing. You are overmatched. And so am I. And so having best practices on how to relate with technology where we don't feel isolated, where we don't have floods of dopamine and serotonin and adrenaline, which are really feel-good chemicals that we get.
Yeah.
We miss the important one, which is oxytocin. So oxytocin, as you'll recognize, is the cuddle chemical. It's that chemical that we release when we're with people and there's a sense of shared experience. So we get hits of adrenaline and dopamine, kind of cocaine and amphetamine is what that feels like when we're scrolling, but we don't have that bonding closeness that takes place, when we're laughing together or crying together or making love or whatever we're doing. So we're missing this very deep connection chemical. And so we're not ready and we're not doing a good job at it.
I think that that's really amazing that you share that. And one thing I'll share that I haven't really said on my own social media before is that when we were trying to get pregnant last year, we had 2 miscarriages before I decided that I was going to take a break from social media. And I took a 6-week break where I was completely off, deleted the app. And I don't think that it's the only contributing factor because there were a variety of different things that we did differently. But that was the month that I got pregnant and we got pregnant with our second son. And so when you share that about like oxytocin and like connection, it's like we had a deeper connection at that time because I'm going to like get emotional. It could be because of that, I think, because I was separated.
Stay with it, Kelley. Like, speak on that. Like what are you feeling right now?
Just like this, I think, like deep sense of gratitude that I actually took that time and space for myself, that I actually, because for so long I was unwilling to do it because I was like, this is going to be like, if I keep going and pushing with social media, like that's what's going to grow my business. And I was sacrificing the connection with my husband and the desire for a second child for that. Oh my gosh, this feels so good.
But doesn't it feel good to be just honest?
Oh
say,
my God,
listen,
yes.
I got. So you and me and we all, Chad, all of us have feelings inside of us. And you know what we do? We don't speak to them because we're afraid of what people will think of us. And this is the whole thing inside of social media. And you're leading the way right now, Kelley. You're saying, okay, listen, I am feeling flooded with how disconnected I felt.
Yeah.
And I'm recognizing what connection feels like. And I'm so grateful that we figured that thing out because is it a boy or girl or?
We have 2 boys now. And I just, it's something I'm planning to do again, the whole month of October. Because it just feels really good to take some space and it also allowed me to come back to social media with such a different presence and so many more boundaries because I know that it makes the rest of my family feel much better. So
I've never been able to have a positive relationship with social media.
He fully deleted it. Like fully.
Oh, you did?
Chad did.
So
Yeah.
listen, so here's the recipe though. Chad, you're off of it. Kelley, you're going to be off once a month. So if you do that for like 3 years, you're going to have three more kids. You'll have a basketball team soon. Like it's coming. Shifting gears just slightly. I love being a work in progress, and I just asked you like boy or girl, and I just had a conversation on the Finding Mastery podcast with somebody who he's a transgender male,
Yeah.
and I got a great education. So he's like, Mike, you were assigned male. You were assigned a gender. And he goes, they looked at me and I didn't have testicles, and so they said female. That's never how I felt. It never fit for me. It was this great insight, like, and I'm just going to pull on how I'm inspired by you, Kelley, like Kelley putting words to the feelings and just being true. And he's like, listen, this is the fucking hardest thing I've done. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And so I asked you, but what I want to say is like, how were they assigned at birth? But even seems a little bizarre for me to say it that way, but
Yeah.
sorry for me being a work in progress here, but I just want to be thoughtful about it.
I love that. I think that that's amazing. I think that, and like what he said, like the hardest work is the most rewarding, but thank you for asking. Yeah. They both assigned as boys.
Yeah. There you go. How about it?
Yep.
So she alluded to it, but I'm particularly worried about America's youth. I think they had, I don't want to say the toughest go, but I think they had a real tough go in COVID. And I think that hope is generally low. And I don't think many of us, but maybe particularly them, don't necessarily have the tools in their tool belt to deal with anxiety, stress. They don't have any sort of function to wake up and deal with those type of things. And the study she alluded to, was generally stating that, they have a lot of, concern about their place in America moving forward and just the world in general. And so what like tips and strategies would you give to the younger generation just to kind of start building on that and developing positive mindset and how to deal with, angst?
Oh, okay. Rich question, Chad, because prior to the pandemic, we didn't have the tools in place, right? So the pandemic just accelerated everything. Like, where did you, maybe you did, I don't know, but where did you learn how to really work with emotions? Like, how were you taught how to work with your thoughts and emotions? I didn't have it. And I don't mean to be rhetorical. Were you taught it explicitly?
No, absolutely not.
I don't think so. And I don't think that we've never talked about that before, but I will say, like, to give Chad a little credit, I've dated a few different men in my life, and he has always been, and I've told him this before, like the most emotionally available person. That doesn't mean that I don't think that he has like areas where he could work on things like anxiety, in terms of the fact that he, grabs his phone first thing in the morning, like most people.
Wow, calling you out.
We'll get to that.
You want to make him crazy? Start talking about your exes a little bit more. Like,
right.
It's just there's just always a thin porous, right? There's a thin porous when we start talking about exes. Yeah.
But I think that he has. I don't know why or how you're able to do that, but I think that
parents.
You are, maybe your parents. I don't know.
I don't think I was necessarily taught it, but my upbringing largely was everything's out on the table. Like, be free with your emotions, say what you feel. Like, I never grew up where there was,
we were more of a sweep it under the rug kind of thing.
You were. Was there heritage? Like, what was your heritage, Kelley?
Italian.
Italian. Italians don't. So my roots are Sicilian, and so we
really
did
same
not sweep. Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah. So you guys swept it under the rug. Maybe it was just a little too dangerous.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe it was. How about you, Chad? Where's your family?
A mix of. So I'm Jewish by descent, mostly on my father's side, but we didn't practice or anything. And then my mom's a mix of English and German.
They're both doctors.
Both doctors, very pragmatic. Really value education. Took the assumption that if the roof was over our head, like, things were going well. But always free with emotions, and always taught us to kind of pursue our passions and that kind of thing.
Well, there you go. I mean, sandboxes that we play in matter. They shape us. And There's a couple things to answer your question concretely. Is that as let's just talk about the United States for a minute. We do not do emotional intelligence well.
Yeah.
We do not do the psychology of awareness well. We don't even teach confidence. We don't teach deep focus. We do not teach arousal regulation, emotional awareness. We don't teach these things well. They're like a life skills class somewhere, but they're really not hydrated in the same way that math and history and some of the more technical skills that we're trying to teach our kids. And we tell our kids to sit down, be quiet, and listen for 45 minutes. And if you're in a progressive school, we just might do some group training and some might get outside and do some stuff and get our hands dirty, but usually not. And so we designed it by a top-down, introverted experience for the kids. But most of the time, the only people talking are the adults in the room. And so, yes, I'm kind of coming after the U.S. system for education because there's some really deep flaws in it.
Yeah.
And we need, as parents, that's okay. Like they're doing some basic block and tackling, like schools are. So as parents, what we need to do is say, okay, where's the gap? All right, so there's a gap in psychological skill development. And I'm not talking about intelligence. I'm talking about the skill of one's mind. And there's a gap that I want to be able to solve for my kids. So how am I going to do it? Well, let me just turn them over to sport. No, that's probably not going to be the answer, but it is a great place to learn about these skills. And so confidence is a skill. Confidence comes from one place and one place only. And just like all skills, any skill that you have a certain level that you're at right now, and you can get better at it. You can practice it. But if you don't know how to practice the skill of confidence building, it becomes a bit of a mystery. And what does that do? It kicks up anxiety because we don't know how to take care of ourselves and back ourselves with our own, sense of reliance here. So what is the skill, as you ask? Self-talk. Super mechanical, unbelievably mechanical. But what you say to yourself must be backed in reality, and it must be there's a credibility that you speak to yourself, and it must work for you. It can't work for anybody else. So it has to be true. You have to have earned the right to say what you want to say to yourself, about the condition that you're in. So the way it works is that you take a quick snapshot inventory of your internal abilities. And this is happening like real time under the surface. You're taking a quick snapshot of your external demands, like what is this moment going to require of me? Do I have what it takes? And if I don't know how to speak to myself and back myself in a credible way, emotions flood. And the emotions kick on, and it's the fight, flight, freeze mechanism. And once that thing starts to kick on, it's too big. So once the fight, flight, freeze, I'll be technical for a minute, the sympathetic nervous system kicks on in your body, it takes 45 minutes plus to clear those chemicals. So for 45 minutes plus, you're going to feel agitated. So the best you can do is kind of hold on to the elephant because it's running. And that's okay. If you know it, it's okay. That's why in high performing sport, we do so much work to front load the mental skills so that they're working the skills prior to that big flood of emotion. And so you're constantly working ahead of time to be in an ideal mindset, to be in an ideal state of mind where you are now fill in the blank for you. Is it calm? Is it aggressive? Is it smooth? Is it curious? Is it, competitive? What you got to fill in the blanks for you. So this is the way it kind of works, is that it's a little more nuanced than this, but you develop an awareness of how you want to live, how you want to be in your own bag of bones. And then you work backwards from that. If I want to feel this way and be this way, how do I speak to myself? And what capabilities do I need to develop so that I can be about it and not just think one day I might be able to be about it? And so it's coming up with great clarity about how you work from the inside out, knowing what your target is, which is your ideal state. And that kind of work is not easily answered, but once you get it right, it becomes a bit of a bullseye in a dartboard, and it gets so much easier to maneuver in high stress, high pressured, fast speed environments.
Oh my gosh, everything you just said, I feel like I opened up a floodgate of like a million questions I
No,
want to
please. Yeah.
ask you.
Yeah. Good.
That
Good.
was like so fascinating, especially what you said about the
Yeah.
fact that it takes 45 minutes for your body to clear that fight, flight, freeze response. I had no idea. I have been reading a lot lately about how thoughts create emotions, and emotions are like chemical reactions in your body. And so before I ask you more about the fight, flight, freeze response, because that is really fascinating to me. And I think that our whole society runs around so overwhelmed with a million and one things on the to-do list. Can you speak a little bit more on how thoughts create feelings and those chemical reactions, and then how that can potentially lead to physical reactions in your body, whether it might be like digestive issues or I don't know, like people talk about, autoimmune conditions or maybe eventually cancer. I don't know, like what kind of information do you have on that
Okay.
subject?
So your question is about like how do thoughts and emotions work together?
Yeah.
And you're right on the money. The debate is not clear.
Okay.
The theory is not clear if it's how they work. Thoughts drive emotions, or is it do emotions impact thoughts?
Uh-huh.
And so the easiest default that most scholars would say, yeah, that's reasonable, is that they work together. So thoughts and emotions work together.
Okay.
Now, I am more of the ilk of for me, and the science that I come from of cognitive psychology is that thoughts do impact and drive emotions. So I will err on that side of it because I feel like I have a better ability to do something with my thoughts because once emotions come on board, they feel too big for me. So I think the not the truth, but the more accepted position is that thoughts influence emotions and emotions influence thoughts. Now let's decipher these just a bit more here. Is that there's a difference between feelings and emotions. So emotions are observable. You can see my emotions, and I can see Chad's emotions. I can see his physiological response, and they're designed to take emotion. And so pupils dilate, hands might shake a little, muscles might tighten up, you might sweat a little bit. There's a whole physiological response that we see emotions. So emotions are public, but feelings are private. So feelings are the way that you interpret the emotional experience. So isn't that a fun like nuance?
Yeah.
So I don't know your feelings. I might see that you got flush, and I have to ask you, oh, are you embarrassed? Or are you nervous? Or are you like, I have to understand what the feeling is or what the state that you're interpreting. I'm sorry, the way that you're interpreting the state. Okay, so now let me back into thoughts. We can't see thoughts. We don't know how much they weigh. We don't know where they go. We don't know where they start. We don't know if they're colorful or black and white. So we don't know if there's a contour or a weight or a shape to thoughts, but we know we have them. So this is it's like gravity. We can see the effects of gravity, drop something off of the table, like you can see it falls. And we can see the effects of thoughts, but we can't see thoughts. So the best we can do is become aware of thoughts. And once we become aware, and again, thoughts are completely private until you open your mouth and say what your thought is, right? And so that's why putting words to thoughts and words to emotions are so important. So the best we can do is become aware of our thoughts. And then once we're aware, we can start to guide. We can start to say, oh, I see you. Like, that's actually not going to work right now. And so there's an eloquence once we become aware of our thoughts. And we can train and condition our thoughts to be more facilitative of the person that we want to be. And that's why it goes back to that bullseye thing. And if we don't do that work, I'll be super concrete. If we're not aware of our thoughts, if we struggle in being aware of our emotions, if we struggle in being aware of how the world around us is actually unfolding, we're not even in the game of high performance. We are not even close to the game of wisdom. close to the game of mastery. So it begins with awareness. And then with awareness, then we can develop the skills to be able to adjust eloquently or even preempt in a facilitative way how we want to show up. Now, if we're not aware, we run it straight into a condition where we are going to be moving from acute stressors to chronic stress. Now, with chronic stress, over time, all organisms go through a very predictable phase, according to Hans Selye, way back in the early 1900s, this research. So alarm goes off, you got all those fight, flight, freeze mechanisms. And if we don't shed that, just like your dog, do you guys have a dog?
We have 3 dogs.
You seem like you're dog people. So just like your dog runs to the door when the male person kind of knocks or a strange sound, and their hair comes up. What kind of dogs are we talking about?
We got a Saint Bernard, a golden retriever, and a boxer.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, we're all related.
Yeah, you got big dogs. Okay, so they run, but they run.
Oh, yeah.
And the hair comes up and that whole thing happens. And then when they realize there's no threat, what do?
Chill out. They go back and lay down on the couch.
And as they're walking back to their favorite little spot, they'll roll their head, they'll roll their body, their hair will start to come down, they'll roll their hindquarters, and then their tail will do something. They shed it.
Yeah.
They just let it all go.
Physically, yeah.
Right. You could now talk. It's like it never really happened. And so the acute alarm happened and they shed it right away. But what do we do as intelligent humans? We have these alarms, that go off, whether it's the way that she looked at me or he looked at me and what did that mean? Or shit, I got a deadline or whatever it is. And we don't really shed it. Yeah. So we stay up in this chronic state of stress. And then if that doesn't get resolved in a meaningful way, this is where Hans Selye re-enters the conversation, is that we move from chronic stress to fatigue to staleness to burnout to early death. And that is true for all organisms, including the 3 of us here. And so if we're up in that chronic stress phase, that's where the system begins to break down. That's where we get everything from irritable bowel syndrome to fill in the blank disorder, disease, illness. And it's an unhealthy relationship with stress. We need stress. Yeah. That's what makes us. Stress makes us. It's the thing that allows us to come alive. We can't work in a world where we don't have stress and change. But if we don't have the internal skills to love it and to navigate it and to work with it, we fall victim to chronic stress and our own adaptive inability to adapt to the unfolding, very complicated, sometimes rugged, oftentimes messy external world. It's a very difficult place to experience happiness and fulfillment and joy and love and kindness and the virtues that we want to be. Yeah. And money won't solve it. A roof will help.
Yeah.
A lot. Basic ability to choose, some stuff like some of the luxuries. It's kind of nice, but it does not solve what we're talking about.
I love that you said that, because I think that so many people think that, first of all, thank you for connecting the dots from the mental to the physical, because I think that that's so important for people to understand. But second, I think that so many people think if I just have money, it's going to solve all my problems. But I think that you work with some of, the best of the best and CEOs and wealthy people, and you would know best that, people from those vantage points have stress and problems too. And so before Chad kind of gets into his question, because I know he wants to ask you about those hyper successful people, my one question to you would be logistically, if we're going to dumb it down for everyone in our audience, and they want to start working on that chronic stress, what do they do? Do they meditate? Do they journal? What do they do? How do they become more aware of the thoughts to release some of the chronic stress?
Okay. What do you do? What are some of your best practices?
I meditate for 11 minutes every day.
Why 11?
I had tried a variety of different meditation techniques and it never stuck. It never stuck for so long. And so finally, I started taking a course a little over a year ago. And it was this mantra meditation is the one thing that allowed me to stay consistent.
It's a great one.
Yeah.
So meditation's been around 2,600 years. The information that's coming out of the laboratories about some of the benefits or impacts of meditation is ridiculous. I mean, one, it is the practice of becoming more aware. Mm-hmm. So go back to the early part of our conversation, and you're not even in the game if you're not aware. Mm-hmm. And so it is the beginnings of that. And there's some interesting research, kind of for the modern day, maybe fidgety skeptic, about meditation, is that when we do mindfulness training, not only to become more aware, but we can concentrate better. There's better focus, because it really is a refocusing practice. When your mind wanders, which it will, that's the moment of awareness. I caught it. Cool. Come on back. Refocus. And then we report better arousal regulation, better parenting, better performance in high contact environments, or high stress environments. And the list goes on and on. And so not only do we sleep better, our mood's more regulated. It's remarkable what's taking place. And so 11 minutes is good. 8 is like a minimal effective dose. If I'm going to be kind of tightly rigid here, 20 is, we're finding better results. But the game is to get in and to spend time becoming in contact with your inner life. Mm-hmm. And it's a massive game changer, because if you don't realize that you're kind of up in that chronic thing, you just keep plowing. Mm-hmm. And so part of your practice can be 11 sitting, let's say, right? And then it can be, just keep it simple, another 11 purposeful breaths throughout the day. Yeah. And so like just long exhales, and just be in that exhale, and like that would be a way to extend it in another more intentional way. Like so let me be more concrete. Mindfulness. Yes. Check. Sleep. Check. Massive rock to get inside. Like if you can't get sleep right, okay, you might have a sleep disorder. All right. So what do we do there? Get your hydration on point. Like an easy little rubric here is 40 ounces before 4 o'clock. And it's all, hydration is independent, to the person. I might sweat or have a different metabolism than you or whatever, but like 40 ounces before 4. And the simplest thing to do is make sure kind of before you get going in your, whether it's before breakfast or right after breakfast, like getting in 8 to 12 ounces of hydration is really important. So colorful foods, making sure that, this is all the stuff grandma taught us, right? Like, and Skittles and M&Ms are apparently not the colors that they had intended. So getting in that kind of vegetable-based, fruit-based stuff. Mm. Those are big ones. Those are really big ones. Being outside, laughing, social environment. And then here's one that's counterintuitive. Doing hard things. So everything I just mentioned, including salt baths, whatever, like all of those kind of relaxing things, are down-regulating techniques to kind of take you off of the high stress that you're feeling. But what if you could handle more stress? So what if we purposely designed stress capacity building practices, and you purposely did really hard things? So that creates more available space, a higher tolerance, a deeper ability to work with high stress rather than it work you over. Right. And so those things are like cold, intense training, like HIIT training or re-HIIT training is a new training methodology. And you can fill in the blanks, like long exhales, where you're really stressing your system. And we can go on, but most people don't want that. What they want is some of the down regulation stuff.
That's really helpful. I think that the challenging things are what also like lead us into more growth and evolution as human beings. So I like that.
Got that right. Yes.
I mean, for me personally, the morning routine has become everything. And I used to not believe in it at all. No, like my day used to be completely scattered. Like, whenever I have a gap in my calendar, I'll work out. And so I love some of the revelations you've shared around like the wiring of the brain, and specifically the moment you wake up, like your brain it's assessing danger and not opportunity. And so I think a massive component of balancing that like daily go-getter mentality versus the fear paradigm is for me, at least, like the first hour when I wake up. So I have to work out. It's much better if I don't look at my phone.
I was
And
gonna
there's a
say
number of other things that go into it, hydration, etc. But I don't know. For some reason, with me, if I don't start it off on the right foot, it
he's
is
completely different. I mean, I think we all are
very
completely
challenging to
different
get it
human.
back. And I read a lot and heard you talk about your morning ritual. So what are your thoughts on that? And then, what tricks do you have for how you wake up?
I think there's I don't think there's any tricks. I don't think there's any hacks. I think there's like foundational first principles, and working from first principles will probably take you further, Chad, than looking for, like something I can patch for a little
Mm,
bit. And so first principles are really important. And that is like, what are your guiding principles in life? When you strip it all down, what are the things that matter most to you? And surprisingly, they're not that different across people.
mm,
Now, there might be an artistic way that you say it differently than I say it. And then if you work from that place and you're like, my guiding principles in life are, my first principles are, and you write those things down and you really metabolize them, they were part of you. You would wake up in the morning and you would relish, and it would be easy to think about, I'm investing in being about that man. And of course, I'm going to get my fitness together. I'm going to be able to do some gratitude work. I'm going to do some breathing work. I'm going to do journaling, whatever the practices are less important than they are supporting first principles. And so I will share with you the four practices that I have, but I just want to make sure that we're kind of tipping our hat to a source code as opposed to, some sort of patch or hack. And so, for first things I do in the morning, and it's like anywhere between 60 seconds or 6 minutes, somewhere in there. And it does not involve my physical stuff. I do that fitness work in the afternoon. For me,
mm,
it's better. So first thing is one deep breath. So I'm setting, I'm taking some control over telling my brain that we're okay, because a long exhale is a wonderful luxury of a safe environment. So instead of getting on that high stress moment, the high stress train, I meant to say, I'm going to take one long exhale. And it's something like an 8-second exhale, 4 seconds in, 8 seconds exhale. And I might do two, three, four of those until I get a feeling that I'm looking for. And then I'm going to do some gratitude work. Might be just one thought of gratitude, or it might be 3 or 14, whatever. But the idea is that I'm really going to do work to feel gratitude. And it might be gratitude for my wife who's next to me. It might be gratitude for my eyes. It might be gratitude for my shelter, my son, fill in the blank. But the work is just to feel it, not
mm.
just to check it, but to feel it. And that takes a little time to get into. But with practice, we get better. And then the next thing is I just kind of clear that and I say, right, what is my intention for today? And if we're not careful, that's almost like a woo word, but it's a more sophisticated word than that. It's like, what am I setting out to do and how do I want to be? So this is not a goal setting moment for me. It's like, what am I doing with my life today? And more importantly, how do I want to show up? I can control that, right? Kelley, Chad, you can control how you show up. And so I go through quickly, like, what am I doing today? Okay. What am I trying to really get after? Back down to first principles. How do I want to be? And I'm just using my imagination for a handful of seconds or minutes there. And then the last thing I do is I just stand up and I take a moment to be where my feet are. And being present means that your body and your mind are in the same place. So I'm fortunate to have 2 feet. And so I stand there and I'm just kind of grounded and I'm like, okay. And I just notice what it feels like to be fully present. And that's how I start my days. And I feel like next thing that happens for me is I flip on the music, family's buzzing around a little bit, get my son, he's in 8th grade now. So getting him ready to school. We got tunes rolling, vibe is set, and like,
Yeah.
And you're off.
So that's kind of how it starts for me. And I do intermittent fasting. So food comes later, fitness comes later sometimes.
That's awesome. I think that, like we've mentioned a few times, you and yourself included and the people you work with are highly successful people, and not necessarily morning routines, but do you notice like that there are different qualities about those people than, like, let's say the other, like we're talking about 0.05% of the world versus like the rest of all of us? What what are some of the things that they have going for them that maybe people could strive for if they want to be one of those hyper successful
Yeah,
people?
what's a common denominator?
Yeah, what's a common denominator?
It was my early attempt in the psychology of high performance to understand that. And I wish I had an easy answer. I will say a few things that I think are important to note though. The half percenters that you're talking about,
Mhm.
they are just like us, but the way that they organize their life is different. And so many of them, and I'm not talking about just the extremely wealthy, I'm talking about folks that are changing an industry.
Mhm.
So they, in that respect, if they're the best in the industry and the industry is a global industry, these people are changing the rhythm of the world.
Okay.
And so those people, whether they might be in business or they might be artists or athletes, that they're hard to be around.
Interesting.
And so I don't want to say this from it's not a judgmental standpoint. It's fun to be around them for a dinner, but then it's hard to be around them for more than that because they take up so much space that what they're occupied with typically is the thing that they're trying to solve. So either they're trying to solve this business thing and this artist thing or whatever it might be, or they're trying to solve themselves. And this is all just a ruse, to 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 fan the narcissism. And we're all a bit narcissistic. So, but it's hard to be around them because it is an uncommon, relentless commitment towards that one thing.
Mhm.
And then they fundamentally organize their life around that. So it might look like after the second dinner, like, whoa, like, I don't know if I matter in this thing other than a cog in the wheel. And like, Jesus, it's all about fill in the blank. And this doesn't seem healthy, but it sure looks fun. But is it? I
Mhm.
mean, they're better at stress in many cases than the rest of the world because they practice living in it so often. They design their life to go find it, to sort it out, to solve the thing that breaks during stress, to better understand what falls apart when there's pressure in the ecosystem. And so they do tend to be better at it, at stress. They tend to be obsessed with the thing. Balance is not part of the equation unless the thing is that they're best in the world at is joy. Well, then it looks a little different, but that's one industry, right? That's like so I'm talking about the folks that you're probably thinking about.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to there's a truth seeking mechanism that they have that's really important, and that truth seeking is either to confirm their kind of crazy reality that they're working from. And it's like a truth that fits them. But some of them are more healthy in their approach and they're looking for and committed to a deeper truth about how something works.
Mhm.
And some of them are hard to reach because they're so walled off with not knowing who to trust and how to trust. And some of them are really available and vulnerable. And so that's not a variability that I've seen consistency on. So it really is that uncommon, relentless, fundamental commitment to unlocking the thing that they care more about than just about anything else in the world. And I'll just use an example. In football, like in the NFL, it's common to say, oh, it's faith, family, football. And then the next question is, in what order? And they go, oh, yeah, faith, family, football. Well, do you go to church on Saturday or on Sunday? How do you practice your faith? No, well, Sunday's a work day in the NFL. How many hours do you work? I don't know, during the season, like 120. How do you do family? Let's be honest. Let's be really honest. You've made a commitment to football, so that's like a commitment to work. And that's a pretty extreme environment. I'm not knocking my coach friends. I've learned so much from them, like so much from them. But when we're honest, it forces us to feel some pain. And when we feel that pain, then we have some choices about what we're going to do with it. People do not change until they feel pain. And uncomfortableness is how we grow, but we have to walk through the doorway of pain. We have to meet adversity, in a way that we are going to be honest with ourselves to really become the human we want to become. And so those are the leaders of industry that I love being around.
So
And
would
so
you say that those people are better suited to deal with discomfort and the uncomfortableness that comes along with change? Because something that comes up in my coaching practice a lot is that like people will say like, oh, I'm going to change. I'm going to eat healthier. I'm going to, stress less. I'm going to do things differently. But then they fall back into these old habits and like change becomes like literally it's just self-sabotage all over the place. And so when highly successful people feel that pain, are they more likely to change than the average person?
it's cool. I would love to say yes, but I'm not sure. I think we need to give one more wrinkle, which is sometimes for the highly successful, it is a socially acceptable place to be narcissistic, obsessive, anxious, intolerant, unreasonable, and fueled with power and money and prestige. And, so there's this pro-social condition that when you wrap those around like the psyche of a person, or if maybe that's not a way to say it, but it's more like when those are part of a person's psyche, they don't really like change. They can tolerate it as long as they're still in power, as long as there's still, a narcissistic, feeling to the changes that are happening. And so I feel like I'm being like pretty critical of the most successful, but I don't mean to be.
No.
There's a nuance in here that, yes, at one level, they are really good with change. But at another level, if it threatens power or money or prestige or something, they can unsettle quickly.
Right.
And I think the takeaway though is for the three of us and for your community is to practice being great, being very skilled and being grounded and present, being at home with yourself in high stress, highly dynamic, emotionally charged, fast-paced environments. And to practice that, you can do it every day by using words, connecting into emotions with people that you love, because that is dynamic. That you feel naked as soon as you say the truth to somebody, and their response matters, and you don't know what they're going to say.
So vulnerability.
And so, bang on. Let alone like doing some of the other more physical things or designing like at Finding Mastery, we need to operate well in those environments because our clients work in those environments. So we need to have two things. We need to have a high ground where there's a reprieve and we know how to take care of ourselves, and we need to know how to get in the trenches and move with speed. And so it needs to be practiced. And so there's no better place to practice than in your own mind about how you want to be able to think and how you want to be able to feel in those environments.
You find that those type of people that are so obsessed, when it's all said and done, are fulfilled, because you're giving up so many things in other areas of your life. My dad always said, you can only be married to one thing. Does that obsession really drive the happiness because they're so focused on that one thing, or
their happiness come from the obsession and the fulfillment?
Yeah. Or do you often find times that there's regret, and that they had wished they had done things differently or allocated their time differently?
It's hard to be the villain of your story. And so it is hard to look back and think that the sacrifices that you made were for nothing. So there's typically, let's say the narrative is I missed my wife's or my kids, whatever, fill in the blank. It is the most heart tugging for those that are not fully narcissistic. And it's hard to be a villain of your story. So we rationalize. And so that's part of your question. But the deeper part is, no, that's not how fulfillment works. Fulfillment is when you've lined up your purpose in life and you've done it in a way that feels meaningful to you, and you've been part of something that is larger than you, and you've poured into that. And so that's really what fulfillment is about, is a life effort in that way, purpose, meaning, and you're part of something larger and bigger than you, and you've really poured into that. And that doesn't, there's not an isolation in it. So we can, our loved ones, even if they're not in the day to day of that, they get to be part of that. And hopefully we get to be part of the things that they are feeling fueled and fulfilled by. And flourishing is much more interesting to me than fulfillment at some level, because flourishing is operating towards my upper capabilities. So a high performing way of living. There's a wellness and a well-being connected to flourishing. And there's also a deeply connected sense about myself with others. So there's a relational piece to it that is intact. So well-being, relationship, and high performance is really what flourishing is about. And if you add on to it, which is like, what is my purpose and how am I going to pour into that? It's awesome. But so those are some words that I think and practices that are important, at least to me.
I like that a lot. I always say I feel my best every day if I have done something for myself. So worked out, meditated, whatever, something for my family. So taking my kid to gym class or, gone on a date with him, and then something for my business, seen a client, recorded a workout. Like if there's that balance for me feels really good. But I mean, I don't know if that's going to be the case for every single person out there, but I like that the idea of flourishing. I think that is great.
Mm-hmm.
I know I cannot believe that it's already almost been an hour, but one thing I did want to ask you about is, and you kind of just touched on this, but was relationships and relationships with other people, because coming, from this place that we were all in COVID, we were all like really close to the people who are living in our homes, whether that's our husbands or wives or partners or kids or whatever. And I think that, at least in my own practice, a lot of what I saw was people having tension in their homes or aggravation with their spouse, or just like being too close, and like that leading to, I don't know, discomfort. What, if any, recommendations would you have for our audience on how to live with your spouse, with your partner, with your family, and in the most impactful and meaningful way, and to try to, I guess, release any tension if that is something you're dealing with?
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic was an accelerator for a lot of things, right? And so some people made some bad choices well before the pandemic, and they got married to people they shouldn't be married to, and they got married and they shouldn't be married. They're too selfish, and so like, I don't know, like solving that, might be easier than we think, but there's other more kind of complicated social aspects that come with it. And it certainly becomes a whole new conversation if we've got kids, or shared assets in a complicated way. But I say that because really having an honest conversation about the quality of the relationship, and for the relationship to change if it doesn't feel good, if it's not working. I'll go back to my wife and I were married for 7 years, and this was in 2002. So we've been married a long time. And she says, "I love you, but I can't be me in this relationship anymore. You're a good man, but I'm not right." I was like, "We'll figure it out." She goes, No, you've missed all of the signals. I need to be separate." I go, "What? There's no chance. Like, come on, let's figure this thing out." She goes, "What do you think I've been trying to tell you? Like for years." And so here I am as a psychologist, right? And so she said, she lays it down with great clarity, and she's honest with all of the emotions that come with this type of conversation. She says, "I just need to be by myself. I need to know me. And I think I made this terrible mistake." And so we separated. And it was 4 weeks later, we're in contact, and we agreed not to go fuck around. Like that was not the conversation, And so we're young, we're in our just turned 30, I think. And so that was not the conversation. So 4 weeks later, I said, "Okay, listen, I'm dying over here. Can we go to therapy?" She goes, "Listen, I've told you." "Okay, fine. Just Mike, this is for you, but I'm not in the place." So she agrees. We go to therapy. I'm Italian. She's Cuban. We're fucking at each other, in therapy. Like it was a safe place to just let go. And the therapist stops us, and she's, I mean, amazing woman. And she stops and she says, "Okay, this is about as bad as it ever gets." She goes, "You too. This is a," and we're not mean people. So we weren't saying like, "You fucking this," or, it wasn't that. It was just like all this pain. And so she goes, "Okay, two questions. Mike, do you recognize that you need to change your ways?" I said, "Yeah." "Lisa, do you recognize you need to change your ways?" She goes, "Yeah. Like that's why we're here." And so she looks back at me, looks back at my wife and says, "Okay, here's the question." My heart is pounding. And she says, "If you're going to do the work, do you want to do the work with Lisa? Do you want to do the work with Mike?" And I said, "Oh shit, this is the fucking question." And I had to wait. That was my job, to wait. And it felt like an eternity. This woman that I've loved for, since we met when we were 16. And so I looked over and I'm terrified. And she says, "I want to do the work." She pauses and she says, "I don't want to do the work with anyone else." And I took that as a sign. I'm like, "I want to do the work with you. I want to do it with you." And so she laughed and I laughed, and it's like, okay. And so the therapist was like, "Okay, so listen, you're going to do the work. Lisa, you need time." She says, "Here's the second question." And I'm like, "Oh my God, another one." She says, "How do you want to honor your vows?" I said, "Oh shit, I have to be quiet again. She has to go first." The love of my life sitting there, like, you know what that question means, right? And so she goes, "I'm not interested in anyone else. I need to know me." I was like, "Thank God." And so like all my buddies were like, "You didn't kind of give yourself some space?" I was like, Jesus, guys, like
Yeah.
that was not what it was about. It was so real and honest. And so I share that part of my life with you because um, it was a year of real work. I am a different man because of it. She is a different woman because of it. And that work was a year. There was a date that we would go on, but more importantly, it was time with the psychologist, on the chair. And that was just the beginning. It lasted years after that. And fuck, we've been married like 30 some years. It's epic. And so I share that with you because if you're in that kind of situation, maybe the situation is, maybe you made a mistake 5 years ago. Like, deal with that. If not, if you guys want to do the work together, then you need a set of practices and you need a safe place and you need somebody to guide you because you didn't figure it out. You're reenacting the shit that your parents gave you, in this new way. And it's like, you can't see the water that you're swimming in. And so, get with somebody.
Thank you for sharing that. Like you saw, I started tearing up. Clearly a very emotional person today. But I think that is so powerful for so many people out there who actually might be trying to figure out what the best way to navigate something like that is. And so again, vulnerability wins.
I think it's one of the best things we ever did is we went to a relationship coach, and I was opposed to it at first. I'm like, well, I don't really need someone telling me, how to be married or how to operate.
I got it all together.
I got it all right.
Yeah, right.
And she said, "Look, guys, from the time you have your first kid, this was her experience or with her clients. That first year is the hardest portion of a marriage, and there's so much change and there's so much volatility that you really need to be strong here and like practice,
prioritizing each other.
Yeah,
because it all becomes about the kid. And I think that it was intensified because we had our first right when the pandemic hit. And so it was like all of this change all at once that was hard on both of us. And I started my career, which we didn't think I was going to do. We thought I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. And so there's so much change all at once. And yeah, like he said, it was one of the best things we did for our marriage.
I think that doing it annually or at whatever cadence is really important too. She said something to me. I think we were driving home from your parents' house a few days ago, and she's like, what I realized about like marriage and staying happy is that people change. And the question is, do you want to change together, or are you going to be hardened, in your current state and refuse to adapt? And it's such a good revelation and very, very true because, we've changed a lot. We met when we were very, very young, and we had time apart, as many know. And I think without that, probably wouldn't have been successful. Definitely wouldn't have been happy. Maybe we would have gotten back together and forced it. It's hard to
Maybe,
say.
but I think that I don't know. I think that learning to grow with each other is, and accepting the other person's changing is so key.
Yeah. What were you
You know
saying?
what I hope? I hope that the kindness that you guys present with in this conversation is like real. That's what I hope.
Oh, thank you.
I hope that you guys are really this kind, and it's not just some little game that you're playing with us about, but your kindness leads, and it's really
thank
cool.
you.
Mhm.
Well, my 2 kids get going. It might be a little bit depressed, but for the most part,
This is us. So thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. We are so grateful. I feel like I could ask you 1,000,001 more questions. You are
Let's do it
so
again.
knowledgeable.
No, we'll do it again. Let's have some more time together. And
Part 2.
I love what we get to do, and so I'd love to share it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. Appreciate it.
All the best.
Hey, thanks for listening.
Please make sure you rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also connect with us on social media at Wellness by Kelley. Drop us a DM for who you want to hear from.